Today marks our second Sunday of Advent, and last week, you may recall, our first purple candle represented that of hope. Again, interesting enough, in every Old Testament book, there's a hope, there's a pointing to an expectation of Jesus' coming. So we saw hope last week, and then in exchange, Jesus gives us hope. Also now, week 2, we light the second purple candle of peace. So as we look at this Christmas season, we think of the peace that God gives. Again, biblically defined peace is that peace or the assurance we have that God is in control, and no matter the chaos around us globally or more personally close to home, we can still have a peace at all as well. Here's Isaiah 9:6. Isaiah 9:6, speaking of peace. For to us a child is born, to us a son is given, and the government will be on his shoulders. And he will be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. So in this Christmas season, we thank the Lord that Jesus gives us peace. No matter the trouble in the world globally, or again, what's going on in our own personal lives, we can still have a supernatural peace that transcends all understanding. Awesome passage. Now, if you have your Bibles, you can turn with me to 1 Kings chapter 19. We'll be looking at verses 1 through 9 momentarily. 1 Kings 19, 1 through 9. The title of our message today, continuing in this series, Getting Ready for the Holidays, Dealing with the Holiday Blues. Part 3 of this broader series entitled Getting Ready for the Holidays. And if you're listening online, you can see some of the earlier two. We talked about getting ready for the holidays, dealing with antagonists in our lives and critics. And then last week, we're looking at dealing with the holidays blues. And part 2 of that part, dealing with the holiday blues. 1 Kings 19, verses 1 through 9. Elvis Presley once sang about being blue for Christmas. Well, he's not the only one. Many of us struggle with the blues. And by that, it's just, you just feel down. You're bummed about Christmas. Some of us would say that, hey, holiday blues is putting it lightly. I'm just downright depressed, right? Holiday blues or depression this time of year is very common. It could be someone here listening in our church body or online that you're saying, hey, that's me. Holiday depression or the blues is a temporary form of depression that can be caused by a variety of factors, including, and here's some of the causes we looked at last week. Last week, we looked at stress. The holiday can be a very stressful time of year. I remember when I first was hired in my job, my day job here, I remember being so stressed of, I'm new to this. Where I lived in Philadelphia, you and your boss would exchange gifts. And I'm like, do I get my boss something? No, I don't. Do I do? Do I don't? It's going to be a very stressful time, right? Some of you, maybe you just started dating just in the last month or two. And so you're like, yeah, I'm going to get my girlfriend this, but do I go big? Yeah. Do I go small? How many things am I going to get? It can be stressful. Trying to meet all the different holiday parties at your work, or depending on your job, you might have clients and stuff. So the managing schedules. Do I get this person a gift or not? Do I get them like $20? Do I go big? It's travel, right? For some of us, it might be traveling to see family members. It's the whole stress of, oh, geez, I'm looking at the news that the storm's going to hit right when I need to fly out. So it can be a very stressful time, which can cause depression. Stress, loneliness. Many people feel lonely during the holidays. Some of us are maybe just lonely year round. But when the holidays comes, that loneliness meter really starts going off the chart, and it leads to just depression, right? Lonely. Some of us that are single, where again, yet another holiday season comes along and we still haven't met someone, or the person we're dating, they're just filler to catch a movie with, but it's not really the one we could see our lives with. So loneliness. And of course, there's a really serious type of loneliness when you're married and lonely. Right. So some of us, we watch TV and there's K Jewelers and, the snow is all perfect. And the guy surprised the girl with this, wonderful, piece of jewelry. And then meanwhile, the Lexus commercial right after it has the husband buying the wife a Lexus of her dream. Meanwhile, ma'am, you're looking over at Pete, hypothetical Pete, and he's just this, flat, fat slob with his hands down his pants, never tells you he loves you, never gives you a Christmas card, doesn't plan anything for the holidays. So again, it's real easy for the holidays to spark loneliness. Boy, everybody in the commercials are so happily married. Here I am with this guy who barely remembers my birthday, and it's his brother that has to remind him. Right? Loneliness in marriage, loneliness outside of marriage, grief. The holidays can be a difficult time for people who have lost loved ones. Right? So again, grief. This might mark the year one, the first holidays with your significant other or spouse that has passed away, or a parent. And I know firsthand that it could be many Christmases ago, and still, it hasn't happened yet, but sometimes, I think of my significant other that died way back in 2008. I still sometimes go, oh boy, she would have loved that. That'd be a great Christmas gift. Right? So even after all the years, some of us still may deal with grief. The holidays are reminded, maybe you had holiday traditions with a parent, a relative, a grandparent who's passed. Grief, financial strain, especially with inflation and prices are up. For many of us, excuse me, day-to-day living is tight. Food prices, gas prices, it's tough as it is. And then now here comes Christmas with your big old family, right? You got, 8 siblings plus their spouses. The financial strain, right? And so you already know, man, my credit cards are out of control. And geez, here's my son. That's all he wants is the new fill in the box widget. And I got to get it for him. Financial strain. I'll add on there darker days, the prolonged dreariness. And I feel like there was a stretch, and I'm not as infected by weather as others that I know in my life that I love and care about. But even there was a stretch where I just felt like every single day it was like dreary, and I hadn't seen the sun. So for many of us, the darker days, prolonged cloudiness, if you live in a part of the country where it's, the Northeast and things, all of those either connected or apart can cause the holiday blues or depression. Right? So again, there's causes there. It's not like it's just, you pulling it out of your hat. There's true, real live, you can point to causes that experts would say, you bet that can lead to depression or the holiday blues. So last week's sermon was getting ready for the holidays, dealing with the holiday blues. Just as a quick reminder, here's what we looked at last week because it flows into what we're looking at today. Number one, our first point last week was God's love and concern for those with the holiday blues. God's love and concern for those with the holiday blues or depression. So again, what we saw, Jesus, the second person of the Trinity, God in human form, shows his love and concern for a person. Again, historically, people call him Legion. Someone here in our church made a good point that, well, it was the demons that spoke in answer to what his name was. But so this man, historically known as Legion, here's the verse here, Luke 8:35. Here I'm showing you God's love and concern for those of us suffering with the holiday blues, or you'd say, hey, that's putting it lightly. I'm just downright depressed. Luke 8:35, here's Jesus with this demon-possessed man. And the people went out to see what had happened. When they came to Jesus, they found the man from whom the demons had gone out, sitting at Jesus's feet, dressed, and here's this phrase, and in his right mind. And they were afraid. And in his right mind. So the point we were talking about is that here's the second person of the Trinity. God in human form has a significant amount, you'll never understand, love for you and your mental health. Those of you that are going through the holiday blues, might be dealing with depression. Jesus is helping this demon-possessed man be in his, as the phrase was, in his right mind. Shows us that God is not just a God who's worried about your relationship with him, or just your spiritual development. Are you coming to church each Sunday? Are you growing in your knowledge of the Bible? Telling others about Christ? Yes, that's important. But God is concerned about you being in your right mind. The things we're talking about, grief, the loneliness, all those things can lead to you not being in your right mind. The encouragement, the pat on the back is that God has an infinite amount of love and concern for those of us suffering with the holiday blues. Secondly, kind of segueing into what we're going to look at again today, we looked at Elijah's struggle with depression. And I remember this name, Iman Shumpert. If you're a Knicks fan here in the state, Iman Shumpert, who I know played for the Knicks for a while. I was watching, it was God orchestrating it. Wasn't doing my research for the message here. I'm wasting time watching YouTube shorts. And this one pops up of Iman Shumpert, a basketball player, former NBA player. The little short was him, on a podcast. He's been interviewed, and he said, all my life, I thought anxiety and depression and mental health stuff, and here was the word, was fake. I just always thought, well, you just got to be tough and power through it. That mental health stuff was fake until he started struggling with depression. And then he realized how real it was. So I want to tell those of us that are listening today, depression, the holiday blues, as Iman Shumpert learned, it's not fake. Here's Elijah, a famous, probably one of the well-known prophets. Again, people name their kids after this cat. Elijah's struggle with depression we looked at from 1 Kings 19, 1 through 9. Here I'm going to read the passage. Again, just try to use your mind's eye. You won't see it in the slides here. And if you're at home, you can feel free to use an app. But here's 1 Kings 19, 1 through 9, and then we'll kind of break it down a little bit later in the message. But here's Elijah's struggle with depression. Again, by the way, for background, I think I'm going to get into this. For background, Elijah had just defeated these 850 false prophets. So most of them were prophets, false prophets of Baal, this other false god Ashereth. So here clearly, and here he's on his heyday, right? He performs this amazing miracle where he calls down fire from heaven. It consumes this sacrifice. But he's on the mountaintop, literally and figuratively. But then yet shortly after it, 1 Kings 19, we see he appears to be in a depression. So Elijah struggled with depression. It is real. It's not fake. 1 Kings 19, verse 1. Now Ahab told Jezebel, so Ahab was a king, and his wife Jezebel, who's famous, that even those who don't follow the Bible, they go, I know Jezebel. Yeah, I call a good girl. You are Jezebel. Now Ahab told Jezebel everything Elijah had done. This is that killing the false prophets, calling fire down from heaven, and how he had killed all the prophets with the sword. So Jezebel sent a messenger to Elijah to say, may the gods deal with me, be it ever so severely, if by this time tomorrow I do not make your life like that of one of them. Remember, here's this guy standing up to 850 men boldly and confidently, and now he gets an email in essence. It was probably a person, a messenger. So you're face to face with 850 men. You kill these false prophets, have this wonderful heyday with God, doing this miracle of calling fire down. And then all you do is get a simple email of like, man, I'm getting you tomorrow, boy. And then yet we see the signs of depression. Verse 3, after getting this email, this message I just read, Elijah was afraid, anxious, right? Anxiety. Some of us have depression. Anxiety comes along with it. Elijah was afraid and ran for his life. So clearly here's, again, just not himself. He's running for his life from this one woman's message. It wasn't like she sent an elite soldier with a sword. When he came to Beersheba in Judah, he left his servant there, while he himself went a day's journey into the wilderness. He came to a broom brush, sat down under it, and prayed that he might die. Those of us with the holiday blues, you're not right? 1 second he's running for his life, and here's just what, like the next verse later, he's, instead of running for my life, I want to die. Suicidal thoughts. He says here, I have had enough, Lord. He said, take my life. I'm no better than my ancestors. Then he lay down under the bush and fell asleep. All at once, an angel touched him and said, get up and eat. He looked around, and there by his head was some bread baked over hot coals and a jar of water. He ate and drank, and then he lay down again. The angel of the Lord came back a second time, verse 7, and touched him and said, Elijah, get up, buddy. Get up and eat, for the journey is too much for you. So he got up and ate and drank. Strengthened by that food, he traveled 40 days, 40 nights until he reached Horeb, the mountain of God. Verse 9, there he went into a cave and spent the night. The World Health Organization states the following on their website regarding depression. All right, so the World Health Organization says during a depressive episode, right, you want to know if you're having a holiday blues, all right, or if you're just downright struggling with depression, a person experiences a depressed mood. They're saying feeling sad, maybe you're unusually irritable, empty, lonely, words like, I just feel blah. I can't get out of bed for the life of me. I'm not excited about work, things that I used to love. I'm a big football guy, but I could care less if the Giants are on. You may feel a loss of pleasure or interest in activities. A depressive episode is different from regular mood fluctuations. So of course we all, someone says something that hurts our feelings or ticked off how our boss doesn't appreciate a good thing that we did for him. So we all have mood fluctuations, but a depressive mood is different in that the holiday blues or depressions last more than a day, nearly every day, for at least 2 weeks. Other symptoms may include, and here's the World Health Organization saying, look, here's characteristics of depression. I'm going to read the first two. I don't necessarily see a correlation with Elijah. Maybe there was, but here's the first two. But then now the rest are from the World Health Organization. But notice how there's a scripture to support it. Poor concentration. Right? If you're listening today and you feel like, I just can't concentrate at work, like my kids will be talking to me or my grandkids, and I'm following them, and then I kind of zone out. Poor concentration could be a sign of depression. Feeling very tired or low in energy. You're like, well, I don't understand what it is now, but I just like, all I want to do is sleep. I just struggle to get through work. And then as soon as the bell rings or it's time for me to leave, I just, I don't see friends. I ignore my cell phone. I just want to get in bed. Feeling very tired or low energy could be a sign of you're depressed. Here's more, right? Here's from the World Health Organization, but notice the example from Elijah's that appears to match. Feelings of excessive guilt or low self-worth. Feeling of excessive guilt or low self-worth. Why did the Lord have to take my husband, Pete? Maybe it should have been me. He had so much going for him. He could have taken me. Instead of this being the 3rd anniversary of Pete not being with me, I wish God would have taken me. Feelings of excessive guilt. Low self-worth. Geez, I'm just such a loser. I'm a horrible husband. I'm not the breadwinner I need to be. I'm a horrible son. I don't stay in touch with my dad. My life just stinks. I'm nowhere near as far along as my colleagues. 1 Kings 19:4. I have had enough, Lord, Elijah said. Take my life. Here's this proof of excessive guilt or feeling of low self-worth. Here's Elijah, this famous, one of the major prophets, just a well-known famous prophet. Take my life. I am no better than my ancestors. Right? So when you're in a depressive mode, you're doing things, saying things like, man, that ain't you, that ain't right. Here he's saying, I am no better than my ancestors, when he's like one of the most famous prophets of the Old Testament period. A feeling of excessive guilt and low self-worth. It's real, right? It's not just in your mind. It's not just you need to memorize more scripture. Elijah suffered depression. Here's another trait. Hopelessness about the future. A real big one. Hopelessness about the future. Geez, it's already happening. I'm not even in town yet for Christmas. My parents are beating me up on when am I going to get married? When am I going to pop out a baby so they can be grandparents? There's no hope. There's no good guys. No one's interested in me. All the guys want is this one thing, and that's just not me. Hopelessness about the future. I'll always be in debt. Every time I pay my credit card down, something new comes up. That my future is just, there's no hope. Hopelessness about the future. 1 Kings 19:3, Elijah was afraid and ran for his life. Right? 1 second, when he's not depressed, he's standing up to 850 false prophets. Boldly, these were male prophets, but then now he just gets a message from one woman, and he's hopeless about the future. That I just want to die. Thoughts about dying or suicide. And someone might be listening today where no one knows. Your spouse, your significant other doesn't know. You've never shared with your kids or your best friend, but deep down, you're constantly thinking about, I could just somehow end it. It's not so obvious that I committed suicide. You're constantly thinking about dying or suicide. Maybe it's anxiousness about dying, or again, for some of us, it's, it would be nice to just go. I just can't take it anymore. So if you're suffering from severe depression, you're thinking about dying or suicide, 1 Kings 19:4, here's Elijah's on the same page with you. He came to a broom bush, sat down under it, and prayed that he might die. Disrupted sleep, 1 Kings 19:5. Then he lay down under the bush and fell asleep during the day. Verse 6 and 7, he fell back asleep the second time. You're listening today, you might have disrupted sleep. You can't get to sleep. You're waking up in the middle of the night, just ding, 3 a.m. for no reason at all, or just overall, you're sleeping during the day because you're so tired. That disrupted sleep could be a sign that you're depressed. Lastly, changes in appetite or weight. 1 Kings 19:5, all at once the angel touched him and said, get up and eat. He ate and drank. Verse 7, the angel of the Lord came back a second time and touched him and said, get up and eat. Right? Changes in appetite, weight loss. You may not even know it if you're struggling with depression, but maybe a sign is when your coworkers or friends, ooh, Mildred, you lost a lot of weight. Well, you're not trying to lose weight, right? I remember in a very serious depressed mode that I had lost a lot of weight. I wasn't realizing that I was going the whole day not eating. Changes in appetite or weight. Did I just describe you? If any of those things, or especially if a couple things marked you, again, certainly reach out to me. Let's talk. If I can't help you, we certainly can get you the help that you need. But depression is real. Elijah's went through it. And now that segues to our point for today. Practical tips, just a couple practical tips for those with the holiday blues / depression. Even if yours is more year round, where you say, hey, forget the holidays. I struggle with this year round. Here's some practical things that can help. And then, of course, again, I'm no psychiatrist or psychologist. These are just more kind of, aerial level helps. And then, of course, let's work together and I can help you. Let's get someone that, can be down, boots on the ground to assist. But the key thing is there's no reason you should continue the holidays or your life struggling with depression, right? So let's get help. But here's some practical tips. Again, not cure-alls, and no expert, but here's some practical things that can help, perhaps in conjunction with getting more, high-level help. First practical tip that I want you to know, Lord would want you to know that being depressed or experiencing the holiday blues, if you're like, no, don't use that word, I'm not depressed, I'm just in a funk, it's just blue about the holidays. Being depressed or experiencing the holiday blues is not necessarily connected with your walk with God. Being depressed or experiencing the holiday blues is not necessarily connected to your walk with God. Now, sure, sometimes maybe there's a little element to it. A person that's, not walking with God, who's just said, no, God, I'm just living life on my own terms. Maybe some of the things you're involved with is leading depressed. But I'm talking about the vast majority of a person who's going to be listening to this. You're walking with God. No, you're not a saint. You're not perfect, but you're walking with God. You're still struggling with depression. Why? Because being depressed, experiencing the holiday blues, is not necessarily connected to your walk with God. Oh, yes, it is. My pastor, my former Bible study leader says it is. Here's why. Walking with God, Elijah was utterly walking with God, right? No offense, with no disrespect. Are you so godly that you can make pray for God after drenching an altar full of water? Are you so right with God that you can just pray and call down fire from heaven? Well, no, I'm not quite that godly. Exactly. You're not as godly as Elijah, yet Elijah struggled with depression. Being depressed, experiencing the holiday blues, but Dorian, I feel everyone is so happy. Everyone's just excited that Christmas is here and I can't get out of bed. Being depressed, experiencing the holiday blues is not necessarily connected with your walk with God. It's not a proxy, big fancy word. It's not saying that, oh, you're not walking with God. That's why you're depressed. Why? Because Elijah walked with God, performed a massive miracle, stood up to 850 false prophets, yet he was depressed. And if you've had pastors before or people in your life, a parent, your spouse, oh, you're depressed because you're not walking with God. Tell Elijah that. Number two, another practical tip, kind of connected but a little different. Being depressed or experiencing the holiday blues can happen to anyone. Being depressed, experiencing the holiday blues, be it a holiday context or if you just struggle with depression on the 4th of July, forget the holidays, being depressed, experiencing the holiday blues can happen to anyone, right? Here's what I mean. Elijah, we already established, walked with God. So don't think that, oh, if I was walking with God more closely, if I was going to church more regularly, I wouldn't be depressed. No, it's not connected to your spiritual life necessarily. But next, it can happen to anyone. Elijah was one of the most famous prophets of them all. I should have looked it up and make sure, but I think it's Elijah was with Christ on the Mount of Transfiguration. I know some of you real Bible scholars may be wrong. Wasn't it Elijah, Moses? I don't know who the other one was, but I'm pretty sure I think Elijah was one of the ones on the Mount of Transfiguration. But even if I'm wrong on that, Elijah, again, people name their kids after him, just one of the great prophets. It could happen to anyone. A great prophet. Elijah was famous. He was historic, the prophet of God at that time, and yet he struggled with depression. One of the things I want to say, part, and I speak from experience, being depressed isn't connected to your spiritual life. Being depressed can happen to anyone because sometimes, and I know from my experiences with it now, again, in one huge period of time in my life, but even afterwards with more not so significant, depression can also be looked at like an injury, right? Like an injury in some way. So why is it not connected to my spiritual life? Can happen to anyone. Things can happen. Some of those causes we looked at, a trauma, a breakup, a death of a loved one, unexpected firing. All those things, literally, it's like a brain injury. It changes your brain chemistry. For those of us who struggle with depression or anxiety over a period of time, the actual, to run a scan of your brain looks different than someone who's not, right? A breakup, an unexpected breakup, a trauma, a child experiencing a health issue, a death of a loved one. Those things, it's like a brain injury. And here's what's, again, I hope the Holy Spirit will use. Am I right? Diabetes, is my pancreas not right, working right? Is that right? Looking at all of my nurses, right? Not talking about anyone here, but may the Holy Spirit use this. I'm always amazed. Someone can have diabetes. Great, give me a medicine. I understand my pancreas isn't acting right. It's no big deal, no stigma. I can tell you right now, I'm proud to say, oh, my right knee's been bothering me. I'm doing stretches. I wish Maureen was here. My knee is bothering me. Oh, I'm going to pop a Advil, right? When a normal injury or your pancreas isn't right, there's no stigma. I take medicine for it. My right knee has bothered me. There's no stigma of me telling you my knee has bothered me. I take medicine for it. But when it comes to depression, the brain chemistry is off. There's a stigma. I can't tell anyone. I'm so ashamed. Right? Depression oftentimes is simply a reorganization of the chemicals in your brain over a prolonged period. The actual structure of your brain looks different. Yet for so many of us Christians, ready? My right knee, I'm not thinking, oh, I'm not right with God. My knees bother me. My pancreas isn't working right, so I'm taking diabetic medicines or diabetes medicine. I don't think, oh, it's my walk with God. I'm so not right with God, and that's why my right knee is bothering me. I can't tell anyone my right knee is bothering me. Right? See the contrast? But yet Satan, a very real opponent to you, has convinced some of us that, oh, don't you dare tell anyone you're struggling with depression, because you're a Christian. You're supposed to be right with God. It doesn't happen to you, right? So just know depression is a brain injury, right? By the way, fellow Bills fans, I was just thinking the other day or talking with someone, the Bills are struggling, but we don't have a lot of our defensive players. Matt Milano, by the way, so those of you, who's Matt Milano? He's a linebacker for the Bills, big, strong guy. If you stood here with no equipment on and Matt Milano, this hard-hitting linebacker for the Bills, came at you full speed and just leveled you, break 4 or 5 bones in your ribs and everything else, right? It's an injury. Right? So Matt Milano running you over with no equipment on and you not being in pro football shape would cause an injury. Likewise, for some of us, we didn't have Matt Milano of the Bills run us over, but we experienced a major trauma, a breakup, a divorce, financial strain. Like Matt Milano hitting you and breaking your physical body, the breakup, the financial worries, the whatever it caused it, is messed up the chemistry of your brain. So being depressed or experiencing the holiday blues is not necessarily connected to your walk with God. Let's see you call fire down from heaven. Elijah did, and he was depressed. Being depressed or experiencing the holiday blues can happen to anyone. Elijah, one of the most famous prophets of his day, struggled with depression. Thirdly, attention to your physical health, attention to your physical health is often the key to addressing your mental health. Attention to some things going on physically can help you with your mental health. Here's 1 Kings 19, 5 through 8. Here, I won't read it due to time, but it verses, if you're taking notes, 1 Kings 19, 5 through 8a is the episode where he's like, where Elijah's sleeping, wake up, goes back to sleep, gets, he sleeps some more, sleep, and then also the eating, right, where he's like, you got to eat twice. He tells him that, has bread and water. Can you imagine that, made by an angel? I'd love to know what that water tasted like, what that bread tasted like, made by an angel. So attention to your and my physical health this holiday season. I'm not saying it's a cure-all, and maybe your depression is so serious, we need to get more help. But on a practical level, maybe the Holy Spirit can use the 2 points we just made, and here number 3, pay attention to your physical health. It could be a key to addressing your blues right now. First thing, in no particular order, get enough sleep. Get enough sleep. When you're well rested, you're better able to cope with stress. Right? And again, I'm a hypocrite. I'm embarrassed by how little sleep. But if you're going through a funk, you just feel like, just blah, man. I guess I'm looking forward to my nephews or nieces and grandkids coming over, but I'm not as excited about Christmas as I should, or I know I'm not the same. Let's look at how much sleep have we gotten. If it means literally taking a log, right? Just on a little sheet of paper on the back of an envelope, went to bed at 11, and then look at what time did you wake up, right? Get enough sleep. As simple and practical as a physical act as that is, some of us are in the blues because we're just not sleeping, pushing it. We're just not getting enough sleep, right? We're just not disciplined. For some of us, your mood could possibly be more sleep. And if it's simple as setting an alarm, right? Wake up, set an alarm to go to bed, right? If you're someone that's just, well, I just love getting into my book or I love watching my shows, set an alarm. When that alarm goes off, go to bed. Get enough sleep. Next, eat healthy foods. Eat healthy foods. My man here got this nice salad and fruits. Hey, again, I'm not a nutritionist. You don't have to be that healthy, but just taking it up a notch, right? If we can just, cut out on the Burger King every night and so replace it with a salad or whatever, eating healthy foods, right? You don't have to be this, go from, whatever your diet is. If we look at your plate and it's all brown, and that's a good sign when there's no colors on your plate. It was funny this week. I think I was eating waffles, chicken and waffles. I get the order right. I was eating chicken tender waffles. Noah said, "Oh, look at that, boy! Your plate looks so good." I'm like, "Yeah, buddy, it is, but the problem is everything is brown." I said, "Remember, Noah, there's never a good sign when it's brown breaded chicken and brown waffles. There should be some red strawberries on there, some blue blueberries. I'm too lazy to get to the refrigerator and get it." But for some of us, we need to eat a little better. And no, I'm not saying go drastic where it's vegan, gluten-free, no sugar, no nothing. But can you just make a little change, right? Just a little change. Making a decision, okay, now I'm going to pass on that fatty food and replace it with a salad or a good healthy soup. Getting enough sleep, eating healthy can change your mental outlook. As contradictory as it sounds, limiting the alcohol and caffeine. For some of us, we're in a funk. You may not know it. Your spouse or girlfriend has noticed you're drinking a little bit more. Limiting alcohol and caffeine, because believe it or not, alcohol and caffeine worsens the symptoms of depression, right? So it's real easy to grab that Band-Aid of, I ain't taking no medicine, pour yourself a Jack Daniels, and that's your medicine. Limiting your alcohol, lowering your caffeine intake can help with the depression, right? Some of us, we're just drinking more coffee to compensate for our low energy, and it's making things worse. Exercise, again, one of the best, and it was back in the summer, there was yet another new study that showed that in some people, just increasing their exercise was as effective as taking an antidepressant, right? And so again, I didn't say go be LeBron James who spends millions of dollars on his body. You don't got to be Lance Armstrong. But if you're suffering the holiday mood, blues, just going to your mall. And I'm a hypocrite. I didn't do it as much as I wanted to, but I know I caught myself last winter thinking, oh, geez, I'm kind of down. I'm in a funk. I know exercise will help, but it's too cold. And then it hit me with, there's this thing called a mall. Just go to a mall and just walk around the mall, right? So if you're someone here today and like, well, I can't afford a gym membership, or I'm not a gym type person, I don't really know what to do. I don't know what weights. I don't have a trainer. Just walk around a mall, right? And as it gets further deeper into winter, exercise releases endorphins, which has mood and boosting effects. You don't have to do, 20 sprints and lift 500 pounds, but just going for a nice walk, a brisk walk, starting, light and then stepping it up a notch until you're breathing a little bit harder. But exercise, studies show it's almost as effective as, or equally, I'm sorry, no, almost to it, equally as effective as taking medicine for some. Talk to someone you trust. Again, Satan is masterful in that you're suffering the holiday blues. Satan has whispered in your ear. You can't share with someone you're in a funk. You're this, godly person. You go to church. You can't tell anyone. Talk to someone. Talking to a friend, a family member, or a therapist can help you feel better. Talking to someone. Next, seek professional help, right? If you're someone that's listening today, you say, I have done that. I've shared with some people that I'm in a funk. Yeah, good point. I got to eat a little better. I should get more sleep. But I talk to someone and I'm still down. Talk to a professional. Seek professional help is the next one, right? Seek professional help. If your symptoms are severe, if you're saying, you don't realize how often I think of taking my life, and when you start getting in that more serious range, let's, again, connect you with a professional. Seek professional help. And the last one, again, not talking about anyone in particular, the one that I've just seen over my life, not talking about my modern day context. I just grew up in circles and even as an adult, I've been around pastors, small group leaders, Christians, and so here it is, who say that, one, as a Christian, you should never be depressed. Again, the whole point of this is ask Elijah if that's true. Again, so same person could care less that a person has diabetes and their pancreas is not right, but when your brain chemistry is not right, it's not right. This last point is important. If you're listening to me today, don't be ashamed. Don't be ashamed to take medicine for depression, right? Again, not talking about anyone here, not talking about anyone in my life, but over the years, no Christian should ever take an anxiety medicine. No Christian should take a depression medicine. Well, if just memorize this verse, memorize Philippians. You're not right with God if you're depressed. Don't take medicine. Right? I think Satan has infiltrated Christian culture to tell us that there's a stigma and you're not right with God, that you have to take an antidepressant medicine. Here's why I think of it as a work of Satan. One, we just saw it all along. Elijah was depressed. He was right with God. So if you're here and you're thinking, oh, I can't take medicine, I can't see a therapist, because that just shows I'm not right with God. Elijah was. It can't happen to me. I'm a Christian. Christians don't get depressed. Elijah was a Christian. He was depressed. We saw that there's other factors that can cause it. Speaking to someone, and here's the big one. If a medical professional says, look, we've been meeting, you're doing your exercise, you're eating right, you are getting sleep, and you're still depressed, here's a prescription. For some of us, oh, I can't take it, doc. Or some of us may judge those, right? So our golf buddy tells us, hey, Dorian, my depression just got out of control. I'm on this antidepressant medicine. Here's Dorian, getting hypothetical. What do you mean you're on medicine, right? So if you're someone that looks at another Christian, looks down on them for taking medicine, or if you're someone who've always felt ashamed that you take medicine for your depression, here's something to think about. 2 Timothy 4:11, right? Don't be ashamed to take medicine for depression. 2 Timothy 4:11, 2 Timothy 4:11. Here's Paul talking. The Apostle Paul, for context, 2 Timothy, I think it's the last book that Paul wrote. It's clearly towards the end of his life. So he's up in age. He's in a prison with poor conditions. Here's Paul, who rose people from the dead. Euclid, I think, one man's name, fell asleep while he was preaching too long. Paul raised people from the dead. Paul was bitten by a poisonous snake and didn't die from it. Paul, who did all these miracles, casting out demons, raising people from the dead. That Paul, right, can't get more godly than the brother who wrote most of the New Testament. That Paul in 2 Timothy 4:11 says, quote, only Luke is with me. Right? He's in a prison towards the end of his life. He's up in age. He writes, only Luke is with me. Does anybody remember here? This is a little, for $400,000, a Tesla, and a hard-boiled egg. Does anybody remember what was Luke's occupation? What did Luke do for a living? Doctor. Okay, there you go. It was $100,000, a Tesla, and a hard-boiled egg. Luke was a doctor. Oh, this one's a little more harder. So he was a doctor, but for $500,000, a new Tahoe and a hard-boiled egg. What was his avocation? Right, his vocation, what he got paid to do was a doctor. But what was his other career choice? I always joke, Luke really wanted to be this, but his parents said, there's no money in that, so you're going to be a doctor, right? So Luke was a doctor, but what else was he? Kind of like if he was dual career, or probably what his passion was, that maybe I can see him teaching this subject. Remember what the other one was? That's a little harder, right? How about $500,000? So Luke was a physician, but there was something else he was. Anyone know? Just do the time, I'll tell you. Historian, right? So I always pictured, I don't know, I'm just making it up. Luke is the historian of the Bible. So Acts, the history book of the New Testament, was written by Luke. But when we meet Luke, and I'm kidding, we don't know. I just picture when we're going to meet Luke in heaven, Luke's going to say, yeah, I always wanted to be a historian. I wanted to teach at the local college, but my parents said there was no money in it. I had to be a doctor. So that's why I was a doctor, right? So Luke was a physician. His avocation, his passion was history. He wrote the book of Acts with the Holy Spirit, right? Telling him what to do. So, the history book, his Gospel of Luke is more historical. So Luke was a more history. Let me talk to the person who was there. I got to see the witness, blah, blah, blah. So here's my point. I'll close with this. If you were listening today and you've done all that, I journal, I've talked to friends, and I'm still depressed. In fact, Dorian, I'm more depressed this year than I was last year. Don't be ashamed to take medicine. Well, why? Why? I should be ashamed. I'm a Christian. I shouldn't be taking medicine. Paul, a miracle worker, a man who wrote most of the New Testament, has Luke with him towards the end of his life, a doctor. Who knows? We don't know. Maybe Luke prescribed Paul antidepressants, right? But the key thing is that Paul understood that, man, in my travels, and now at this point in my life, when I'm vulnerable, I'm a senior in horrible living conditions in this prison. Yes, I believe in God. I've done miracles. You got it? Paul understood that though I'm right with God, though I've done miracles, I've raised people from the dead, I've brushed off poisonous snakes biting on my wrist and attached, I still have enough sense to know that, yes, God works miraculously, but he also uses the medical world as Paul grabs his buddy, Dr. Luke. Right? So again, if you're here today, Paul had Dr. Luke with him in a vulnerable, unhealthy particular time of his life. There's nothing wrong with using the medical community that God, right? It was God who gave some female scientists, always give credit to female, some doctor who thought, let's use this compound for depression. It was God who did that, right? God orchestrated the science community to give us the medicines we have. Therefore, we not need to be ashamed to take medicine for depression. If I could be of assistance with the message, if this last two sermons really touched on you, again, maybe you're someone that like, oh, I can't tell anyone. I got to be the strong one in our family. Certainly tell me, reach out to me. Let's get help. And if I can't be of assistance, I'm humble enough to let's get you connected to someone that can help. But the key thing is there's no reason you should go through this holiday in a depressive state. Okay, yeah, ready? Ready? Okay, yeah, it's okay.